My name is Dinin Do'Urden, second son of House Do'Urden, raised beneath the unending night of the Underdark. This is my story. As far as I knew, I had lived around 100 years, about the age of 35 in human years, though years in the Underdark did not pass as they did beneath the sun. We had no dawn to divide one day from the next, no changing sky to announce the turning of seasons. Our clock was a massive stone pillar at the center of the city, Narbondel. The city's archmage would cast a fire spell each day at the base of the pillar to mark the beginning of a new cycle. Time moved through rituals, patrols, lessons, ceremonies, and murder. The matriarch priestesses of Lolth had absolute power. I had grown among blades, whispered rivalries, and the careful expectations placed upon a noble son. Yet, for all the noise of ambition surrounding my life, the Underdark itself had always seemed quiet. That quiet was what drew me away from the familiar paths. I left the Ellensrig of my house without ceremony. There was no official patrol assigned to me that cycle. No summons waited in the training hall. No message from the matron mother had arrived through the household servants. For a rare interval, my hours belonged to no one but myself. I decided to use my freedom to explore a new cavern I had discovered. I would later learn that this passage led toward the surface world. Such freedom was dangerous in the Underdark. An unoccupied noble might be thought lazy. A solitary male might be thought secretive. A secretive noble might be watched. But I had learned that the surest way to conceal a private purpose was to make it appear ordinary. So, I dressed as I would for a patrol. I fastened a dark piwafwi over my shoulders, an enchanted cloak woven from giant spider silk. I secured my trusted scimitar at my side, Icebrand. I carried a small satchel with a deep Roth leather waterskin and 3 pieces of spore bread. Over my leather armor rested dark mithril chainmail. Nothing about me suggested adventure, and that was intentional. Before leaving, I took a few capsules of Mordain powder from my adamantine chest and concealed them in a hidden pocket of my cloak. Some called this powder Drudunai. If I was ever caught with it by the matron priestesses, I would be promptly executed in the cruelest manner imaginable. But life as a male drow in the Undercity could spell death any day. The powder allowed me to keep my anxiety at bay. I washed 1 capsule down with some Roth milk and headed out. The corridors were still. A few distant lamps cast violet light across the polished walls. Pale quartz curved like frozen lightning through the darker rock. I passed beneath an arch carved with the emblem of our house. A monstrous black spider grasping a weapon in each of its 8 legs. Scimitar, dagger, dirk, mace, spear, hammer, axe, and whip. The guards acknowledged me with shallow inclinations of their heads. Neither asked where I was going. A noble son was permitted mysteries, provided those mysteries did not inconvenience the household. Beyond the gate, the city opened around me. Menzoberranzan rested in its cavern like a field of dark jewels. Towers rose from the floor and descended from the ceiling, some shaped by tools, others coaxed into form through magic. Spider silk bridges crossed the empty air between them. Farther off, the great pillar of Narbondel held the fading warmth of the cycle. I paused for a moment. The city was nearly silent at this hour. Faint boots on stone, the muted calls of merchants, the distant clatter of weapons from a training yard, no cracking of whips, no screams of pain from slaves. Sound traveled farther than it should have, stretched thin by the height of the cavern. Yet, beneath those noises was something older. A deeper stillness waited behind every wall. I had sometimes wondered whether the stone listened to us. Mid-cycle, the city was filled with speeches, commands, threats, prayers, bargains, and secrets. Every house believed its words mattered. Every priestess spoke as though the cavern itself must obey. But now, it was quiet. That thought had always comforted me more than I cared to admit. I descended through the outer district, taking a route used by scouts and supply carriers. The streets narrowed as I went. Noble estates gave way to workshops, storage chambers, and low dwellings set directly into the rock. Passing the bazaar, a merchant was closing a stall. He looked up only once, saw the quality of my mithril, and lowered his gaze. Farther along, an elderly craftsman sat beneath a hanging lamp, polishing a small piece of black stone with a square of leather. No one hurried. The active part of the cycle had ended. I preferred the city in such hours. Ambition softened when people were tired. Even suspicion required energy. At the edge of the district stood an old passage gate. One of the guards stepped forward.
Patrol, Master Do-Erden.
Inspection, I answered. The difference between the two was meaningless, but the word inspection discouraged further questions. He nodded and moved aside. I entered the tunnel. Within a few dozen steps, the sounds of the city began to fade. The passage was broad enough for 2 wagons to travel side by side. Iron brackets lined the walls, though only every 4th bracket held a glowing stone. Between them lay wide regions of shadow. My eyes adjusted easily as my dark vision activated. To a drow, darkness was not an absence. It was a landscape. The familiar sense of spores drifted past. Blue cap, trillimax, fire lichen, and ripple bark. Heat lingered on the stone where travelers had recently passed. Faint thermal shapes remained for a time. A hand pressed against a wall, the tread of a boot, the narrow tracks of a cartwheel. They faded as the rock cooled, becoming less distinct with every breath. As the Drudunai took hold, a wave of subtle euphoria settled in. The walls held a steady temperature, but here and there I saw traces of life. The faint heat of a small insect moving through a crack, the dim outline of roots reaching down from some distant source of water. The tunnel curved several times. With each turn, the city seemed farther away. The silence deepened. At first, I heard only my own movement, the whisper of cloth, the quiet contact of my leather boots against stone, the controlled rhythm of my breathing. Then, those sounds settled into the passage. They no longer felt intrusive. They became part of the quiet. I found that my shoulders had relaxed. That realization troubled me slightly. A warrior was taught to remain ready. Relaxation dulled the senses. Comfort led to carelessness. Carelessness led to defeat. Those lessons were reasonable, but they were not complete. A body held forever in readiness eventually mistook every shadow for an enemy. A mind kept forever alert lost the ability to distinguish danger from memory. I had seen fighters who could no longer rest. Even in secure rooms, their hands remained close to their weapons. Such vigilance was praised. I had never found it admirable. A sword drawn at every sound was not a sign of strength. Sometimes it was merely a sign that the hand had forgotten how to open. The path descended for perhaps 3 miles before ending at a natural chamber. I stopped at its entrance. The cavern beyond was not large. Its ceiling rose 30 feet, supported by broad stone pillars. The floor curved gently downward toward a shallow basin. At its center lay a pool of water. The surface was utterly still. A cluster of blue-cap mushrooms grew beside it, their caps producing a faint blue glow. It spread across the water in a soft reflection. I approached slowly. The pool was clear. Smooth gray stones rested beneath the surface, undisturbed. I knelt. The surface reflected my face. In the Underdark, mirrors were objects of utility. A noble learned early that the face presented to others was merely another kind of weapon. This reflection was different. The pool did not flatter. It did not judge. It held my features only as long as I remained still. White hair framed a narrow face. Purple eyes looked back at me, pupils constricted. The expression was one I knew well. Composed, watchful, faintly distant. A face suitable for House Do'Urden. I touched one finger to the water. The reflection broke into widening circles. My features scattered across the ripples, then gradually returned as the pool became still again. I sat beside it. For a long time, I did nothing. That was perhaps the strangest part of the journey. I did not search the chamber. I did not draw my blade. I did not estimate the defensive value of the pillars. I simply sat. The stone beneath me was cool. The mushrooms glowed softly. Somewhere beyond the wall, water traveled through a narrow channel. I could hear it only occasionally. A quiet movement, a soft shift, then silence again. I removed my water skin from my satchel, but did not drink. Instead, I listened to the quiet sloshing of the water within the leather. My scimitar rested beside me, still secured in its sheath. Eventually, I opened my satchel and removed one piece of spore bread. I broke it in half and ate slowly. The simple meal tasted better than it should have. I drank from my water skin, folded the remaining bread back into its cloth, and returned it to the satchel. I considered leaving. The path back was uncomplicated. I could return to the main road, pass the guards, and enter the city before the next active cycle fully began. No one needed to know where I had been. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I looked toward the opposite wall. A narrow gap stood between 2 pillars. I could feel the faintest movement of air passing through it. There was another space beyond. I rose without haste. I adjusted the satchel over my shoulder and placed one hand lightly upon the hilt of my scimitar. Then I crossed beside the pool. The gap was just wide enough for me to enter sideways. Beyond it, the stone opened into a low corridor. Pale mineral deposits lined the floor, and the ceiling descended until I had to bow my head. The air smelled faintly of dry earth. I took several steps. Then I saw something unexpected. A small mark had been carved into the wall. It was not a house emblem. It was not a warning sign used by miners or scouts. The carving showed a simple circle crossed by 3 curved lines. Time had softened its edges and a thin layer of mineral had formed within the grooves. I placed my fingers near it. Without touching. Someone had stood here long ago. Someone had chosen to leave this sign. I did not know what it meant. Perhaps it was a route to the surface. Strangely, I did not feel an urgent need to discover the answer. The unknown did not always have to become a threat. Sometimes a mystery could remain only a quiet door in the mind. I studied the carving for another moment, then sat beneath it. The low corridor held the same deep stillness. Through the narrow opening, the blue-cap mushrooms cast a dim edge across the floor. I rested my back against the wall and thought of the nameless person who had made the mark. Perhaps a miner had carved it during a rest. Perhaps a traveler had used it to remember the route. Perhaps it belonged to a people who had lived in these tunnels long before the noble houses rose. I relaxed there in the cavern for a while in a fleeting bliss. I left the hidden chamber reluctantly. The pool remained perfectly still behind me, holding the pale glow of the mushrooms along its edge. The carved symbol waited in the narrow corridor beyond it, a circle crossed by 3 curved lines, its meaning concealed beneath the patience of ages. For a little while, I had been free of Menzoberranzan, free of rank, free of instruction, free even of my own name. But the city was not a place one escaped merely by walking beyond its gates. It followed in memory, in habit, and in the careful way a drow learned to place each foot upon the stone. I retraced my path through the abandoned tunnel. The silence gradually thinned around me. First came the faint ringing of metal somewhere ahead, then the scrape of boots, then voices, low and indistinct, moving through the larger passage beyond the chain. When I stepped back into the traveled tunnel, 3 figures were waiting. One wore the dark armor of a street officer. His breastplate bore the insignia of the city patrol, and one hand rested near the crossbow hanging at his side. The other 2 belonged to the Yath. The first was a priestess of considerable rank. Crimson thread traced the web patterns on her black robes, and a silver cider rested at her throat. She was no simple Yathrin. She was a Yath taller, a high priestess. Beside her stood a hooded Yath inquisitor, carrying a short staff of polished black wood. The metal head of the staff curved into the shape of interlocking spider legs. They watched me approach.
Dinin do Urden.
It was not a greeting. I stopped a respectful distance from the Yathtaler and inclined my head. Yathtaler. Her gaze moved over me slowly. Dust marked my boots. Moisture darkened the hem of my piwafwi. My hand rested naturally near the hilt of my sword, though I made certain it did not appear ready to draw.
You have been outside the city.
I have.
Under whose instruction?
My own. The officer shifted slightly. A male acting without instruction was often considered foolish. A noble male acting without instruction might be considered ambitious. The distinction mattered. The Yathtaler stepped closer.
What business brought you into abandoned tunnels?
Inspection.
For House Do-Erden?
For myself. The Yath Inquisitor raised one hand. A thin strand of pale light formed between his fingers. It floated there like a thread of moonlit silk, trembling in the still air. A spell of discernment. Detect thoughts. Perhaps it could sense fear. Perhaps hesitation. Perhaps the intoxication I felt from my addiction to Drudunai powder. Perhaps only the expectation of guilt. I would not allow this commoner's weak spell to destroy my life in the Underdark. I thought of the pool. I thought of scimitar combat training with my little brother Drizzt. I allowed my breathing to remain slow. The thread of light from his spell faded. The Inquisitor lowered his hand. His expression showed disappointment. The Yathtaler's expression did not change.
You found nothing of importance?
Only stone, a dry passage, water. Every word was true. The best lies were often arranged entirely from truth. She studied me for several heartbeats.
Your brother has been named.
I did not need to ask which one. Drizzt. The name escaped me too quickly. I showed too much emotion. The street officer noticed. The Inquisitor noticed. Most certainly, the Yathtaler noticed.
The youngest son of House Do-Erden. His conduct has drawn attention among the Yath. His usefulness is being reconsidered.
Reconsidered in what manner? I said.
A sacrifice has been proposed.
The passage seemed to grow smaller. No blade had been drawn. No voice had been raised. Yet the danger of those words was greater than any weapon. For when? I asked.
The next ceremonial cycle.
Soon. Too soon. Not immediately, but soon enough that every remaining moment had already become precious. Why tell me? The Yathtaler's lips curved in a slight smile.
Because the loyalty of one brother may reveal the corruption of another.
So this was another examination. They wanted to watch my reaction. I thought of cutting down the three of them right then and there. Perhaps they expected me to approve. Perhaps they wished me to report on my little brother. Perhaps they wanted to determine whether disobedience had spread through the males of House Do-Erden, like a mind flayer parasite spreads through the brain. I lowered my eyes in the manner expected of me. The will of the Yath is not mine to question.
No, it is not.
Glory to Lolth, Mother Matron. The answer pleased her. That was all I needed. She stepped aside.
Return to your compound, Dinin. Speak of this only where duty permits.
I bowed once more. Then I walked past them. I did not hurry. Haste would reveal fear, and fear would become evidence. Only when the sounds of their armor had faded behind me, did I allow my thoughts to move freely. Drizzt had been named for sacrifice. The reason hardly mattered. Perhaps he had questioned a command. Perhaps he had shown mercy where cruelty was expected. Perhaps a priestess had simply decided that his death would purchase favor. In Menzoberranzan, explanations often came after judgment. I entered the city through the outer gate. Narbandel's warmth had shifted, and the streets had grown busier. Merchants opened carved chests beneath hanging glowstones. Patrols crossed the narrow bridges overhead. A lizard mount clicked its claws against stone as its rider guided it through the crowd. Whips cracking and screams of slaves could be heard louder now. The ringing of blades and cracking of maces echoed off of the walls. The city continued as though nothing had changed. Somewhere, blades were being sharpened. Somewhere, prayers were being spoken. Somewhere, preparations might already have begun for my brother's death. I crossed the noble district toward House Do'Urden. The beginnings of a plan formed as I walked. First, I needed to reach Drizzt. Second, we needed supplies. Third, we needed a road the Yath would not expect us to take. Most fugitives would flee deeper into the Underdark. They would seek hidden settlements, forgotten ruins, or tunnels beyond the reach of Menzoberranzan's patrols. The priestesses and assassins would expect that. They would not expect us to climb. The surface was spoken of with contempt and unease, a realm of burning light, endless emptiness, and races who lived beneath a sky without stone. I had never seen it. Neither had Drizzt. That ignorance was frightening. It was also to our advantage. The guards at House Do'Urden admitted me without question. Inside, the compound carried on in familiar order. Warriors trained in the practice hall. Servants moved through the corridors. The voice of a Yathrin echoed from a distant shrine, leading a prayer in the sacred tongue. I found Drizzt near the armory. He sat alone on a stone bench cleaning his favorite scimitar. His second curved blade rested beside him. His gentle lavender eyes lifted as I entered.
You were gone, brother.
I was.
Where were you?
Beyond the city. I closed the door and cast a spell of silence behind me. His expression sharpened immediately.
What happened?
I sat opposite him. There was no graceful way to speak the truth. Brother, the Yath have made plans to sacrifice you. The cloth in his hand stopped moving. For several breaths, he said nothing.
When?
The next ceremonial cycle of the Spider Queen.
Fuck, who told you?
A Yath-Taller priestess. A street officer and a Yath Inquisitor were with her. He looked down at the scimitar across his knees. The blade caught the chamber's dim light, reflecting his youthful features.
Do they know you told me?
No.
What do they expect you to do?
Prove my loyalty to Lolth. He understood. In Menzoberranzan, loyalty was often measured by what one permitted to happen to another. Drizzt placed the cleaned scimitar beside its twin. His expression was half anxiety and half depression.
What will you do?
We will leave. His gaze returned to me, now hopeful.
The city?
The Underdark. Entirely. He studied me for a long moment in contemplation.
Where would we go?
Toward the surface. Even Drizzt, who questioned nearly everything, stared at me as though I had spoken nonsense.
The surface?
Yes,
You have found a route?
I found the beginning of one.
A beginning of one?
Yes,
And it may lead nowhere.
I nodded. His expression shifted. For reasons I did not entirely understand, my uncertainty seemed to make him trust me more. He rose.
Then we should pack.
We gathered only what we could carry. Spore bread and deep broth jerky, water skins and my scroll of create water, 2 coils of spider silk rope alongside my adamantine hookshot, 4 whetstone, my prized hand crossbow that I won during a sacrificial duel ceremony, bandages and 2 lesser healing potions, a folded map of the outer tunnels, our scimitars. While Drizzt fastened both scimitars across his back, I retrieved the entirety of my Mordain powder head stash and stashed it into my Pawafwi. I quickly swallowed 2 capsules of Drudunai while my brother wasn't looking. This trip was sure to be dangerous, and I would need my wits about me. We left behind our heavy plate armor, ceremonial clothing, and anything bearing obvious marks of House Duerden. Drizzt removed the silver clasp from his cloak. The emblem of our house rested in his palm. For a moment, he looked at it. Then he placed it on the stone bench. I did the same with my own insignia. The soft metallic sound seemed louder than it should have. We departed separately at different times. Drizzt used a servant's passage and made his way toward the lower districts. I left later through the main gate, carrying my satchel as though preparing for another routine patrol. We met beneath an unused bridge near the outer quarter. His hood concealed his shiny white hair and lavender eyes.
Are we followed?
Not yet, my little brother.
Comforting.
It was not meant to be. I patted the top of his head 3 times. We continued toward the outer gate. The guards recognized me from earlier.
Another patrol, Masters Do-Erden.
I retrieved a lesser potion of mana and downed it quickly. The earlier one revealed a route requiring a second pair of eyes, I said. The guard looked at Drizzt concerned. My brother, I said. The name of our house carried sufficient authority. They opened the way. As I passed the guard, I closed my eyes and began a quiet chant under my breath. Ulu Jaluk Flor, Jaunu Elgin, Belaus Tulu Orb. I pointed my index finger towards the back of the guard's neck. Wispy, luminous threads shot from my finger, which wrapped over the guard's bassinet. He staggered briefly, then recovered. Only when Menzoberranzan sounds had vanished behind us did Drizzt speak.
What spell was that?
Modify memory. A 5th level illusion spell. My muscles ached. A spell of that magnitude nearly depleted the entirety of my mana.
Will you teach me someday, brother?
Yes, I said. Now keep your voice down. We reached the old junction after walking for some time. The unmarked passage waited beyond. I stepped across. Drizzt followed. The abandoned tunnel seemed different with my brother inside it. His footsteps joined mine, and the darkness held the quiet rhythm of 2 drow rather than 1. As we approached the pool chamber, I heard water moving, not dripping, splashing. I raised one hand. Drizzt stopped immediately. The sound came again. An alien, low, wet clicking followed it. Then another. Kuo-Toa. I knew the sound from patrols along the deeper lakes. Their speech was a mixture of bubbling consonants, throat clicks, and damp breaths. The creatures often traveled in groups, carrying crude spears, hooked nets, and shields hardened from shell. I drew my scimitar without sound. Drizzt's scimitars entered his hands just as quietly. We approached the chamber entrance. 3 Kuo-Toa stood around the pool. Their bodies were lean and scaled, their skin gray-green beneath the mushroom's glow. Wide silver eyes turned independently as they searched the chamber. 2 carried spears. The third wore a necklace of small bones and gripped a hooked staff. A shaman. One had crouched at the water's edge. Its webbed hand stirred the pool that had been so still during my first visit. Something cold passed through me. It was not anger exactly. The pool did not belong to me, yet it had given me a moment of peace. And seeing these disgusting fish creatures disturb it felt like watching muddy hands close over a clean mirror. Drizzt leaned close.
We can find another way.
No. The Kuo-Toa with the staff lifted its head. Its nostrils flared. It had caught our scent. There was no reason for delay. I retrieved my last mana potion and quietly downed it. I carefully placed the empty vial back into my satchel. I felt my muscles relax. I couldn't tell whether it was my mana recovering or the 2 capsules of Drudunai I had taken earlier, but I felt good. I was ready. I extended my free hand toward the chamber, summoning arcane magic. The words of the spell passed quietly from my lips, inaudible to anyone except my own ears. Fairy fire answered. Violet flame blossomed around the 3 Kuo-Toa. It did not burn them. Instead, it outlined every scale, every weapon, and every sudden movement in cold, luminous color. Purple radiance rolled across their bodies and reflected in the disturbed water. Their silver eyes widened, confused as to what this purple light was. For a moment, they stood exposed within the darkness like figures carved from glowing amethyst. I dashed forward with a wicked pace. The first spear came toward me. I turned sideways, easily dodging the thrust. The point of its spear passed across my flowing piwafwi. I was within arm's reach of the first Kuo-Toa now. Icebrand came down with violent speed directly between its bulbous eyes. The deep wound froze instantly as ice began to cover its head. The creature folded silently into the shallow water. The second charged from my right. This one's spear came at me faster than the first. I parried the serrated tip of its crude spear against my blade and allowed the force of its attack to slide past me. The Kuo-Toa stumbled forward, off balance. I spun 180 degrees behind the second Kuo-Toa, putting myself back to back against its slimy, scaly body. Out of the corner of my vision, violet fairy fire traced the line of its spine. My blade descended in rotation, cutting downwards along its twisted vertebrae to its tail fin. The creature fell forwards, writhing in agony. The shaman began chanting a strange spell I did not recognize. Its bone necklace rattled against its chest as it raised the hooked staff. A pale blue shimmer of magic gathered around its webbed fingers. Drizzt started forward. I was closer. I dropped to one knee and drew my loaded hand crossbow with my offhand. My vision narrowed as I aimed between the frog-like creature's gills. The mithril bolt loosed. It sung as it flew. A glimmer of light reflected off of the mithril from the blue-cap mushroom lining the roof of the cavern. It struck the shaman's wrist, barely missing its target. I watched as a misty plume of blood sprayed from where the bolt had struck. The spell broke. The creature hissed and charged at me wildly. I threw my crossbow to the ground. It swung the hooked staff at my head. I bent backwards beneath it, supporting myself with my now free hand. I felt the disturbed air pass above my face as the creature stumbled from the force of its wild swing. I recovered, kneeling forward. I positioned my open palm towards its bloated belly. I channeled arcane magic to the center of my palm and converted it to heat. Flames and sparks danced around my fingertips. Ignis! Before the creature had time to bring its staff down on my skull in a second swing, a gaping, smoldering hole had already ripped clean through its body. Gazing through the now charred hole in the creature's body, I watched my firebolt ricochet off of the cavern's walls and evaporate in the pool. It staggered backwards toward the pool. The Kuo-Toa raised the staff again, half in defiance and half in desperation. My fairy fire betrayed every motion before it was completed. Violet light ran along its arm. In one perfect motion, I dashed forward and brought my scimitar from low to high in an arc. For a single moment, the creature remained standing. Then its arm slowly lopped off from the Kuo-Toa's torso, staff still grasped in hand. It collapsed beside the water. The chamber became quiet. Only the pool continued to move. Small ripples spread across its surface, breaking the reflections of the mushrooms into fragments of pale blue and violet. The fairy fire faded slowly from the fallen Kuo-Toa. Drizzt lowered his scimitars.
You moved before the first one knew you were there.
They knew we were there.
Then before it understood.
That is usually sufficient. He looked at the three bodies.
There may be more.
Yeah, I said. Only moments earlier, the chamber had been filled with spear points, spell light, and motion. Now, it was returning to itself. I knelt and retrieved my crossbow. We searched the Kuo-Toa quickly. They carried little of value. Dried fish, a length of wet cord, several bone charms, and a small stone token marked with a crude spiral. No sign suggested they belonged to a larger patrol, though such certainty was impossible. Drizzt dragged the bodies away from the pool while I cleaned my blades with a strip of cloth. We did not linger. Before leaving, I stood at the water's edge. The ripples had begun to fade. My reflection returned slowly. It looked much as it had before. White hair, purple eyes, pupils constricted, a composed face. My scimitar, Icebrand, reflected a pale blue light against the pool. The ice magics imbued into it danced across the metal.
Dinin,
Drizzt said quietly. I sheathed my sword. We passed through the narrow opening beyond the stone pillars. Drizzt saw the carved symbol and paused.
a circle crossed by 3 lines.
Yes.
You did not mention it.
There was little time.
Do you know what it means?
No. He studied it.
Perhaps it marks a path to the surface, left by some explorers long ago.
I thought the same, I said.
Let us continue.
We continued into the low passage. The tunnel climbed gradually. In some places, ancient steps had been cut into the rock. In others, the floor had collapsed, leaving narrow ledges above dark drops. We used the rope twice and moved with care. Behind us, there was no sound of pursuit. Ahead, the air grew cooler. It appeared my little brother was right. This path did lead to the surface. The familiar touch of Faerzris faded from the stone. Its blue and purple shimmer became weaker with each mile. until only darkness remained. A wide valley separated us from a ledge above, where what I could only imagine was sunlight. I retrieved my hookshot from my pack and aimed for a crevice that would serve as an optimal anchor point. I pressed the trigger, and the hook securely lodged into the crevice behind the ledge. I climbed the rope first, and my brother followed behind me. Atop the ledge, we felt an unfamiliar warmth from the fading sun. Then came unfamiliar scents: wet earth, wood, leaves. Drizzt stopped.
Do you smell that?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it is the surface.
That is not an answer.
It is the only one I have. The passage narrowed around tangled roots. Living roots. They pierced the ceiling and walls, twisting through the stone in search of water. Beyond them, a faint gray light entered through a crack. My eyes tightened painfully. Drizzt raised one hand.
Is that sunlight?
I do not think so.
How can you tell?
If that is the burning sun of every warning we have ever heard, I expected worse. We pushed carefully between the roots. Cool air flowed through the gap. It did not move like cave air. It came from everywhere. There were no walls guiding it, no tunnel shaping it. It passed across my face and continued behind me without touching stone. I stepped through first. The world opened. There was no ceiling. Above us stretched a darkness larger than any cavern, scattered with thousands of points of silver light. Stars. The sun had dropped below the horizon. Our world seemed so small in comparison. Trees surrounded the opening. Their trunks rose like pillars, but their branches spread and divided, covered in leaves that shifted beneath the wind. A pale moon hung above them. Its light touched the forest floor, turning stones, grass, and fallen branches silver. The air carried more scents than I could separate. Moss, rain, bark, flowers hidden somewhere beyond sight. Drizzt emerged beside me. He looked upward and became completely still. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The forest whispered around us. Leaves moved against one another. Small creatures called from distant branches. Insects formed a soft and continuous chorus beneath the trees. The world above was not silent. Yet none of its sounds resembled Menzoberranzan. There were no commands, no temple bells, no armored patrols, no chanting of the Yath, only living things continuing their lives beneath the open sky. Drizzt lowered the hood of his piwafwi and took a deep breath of the surface air. The opening, which we exited the Underdark from, led to an outstretched ledge. My little brother and I could see for what seemed to be hundreds of miles. Our first view together of the upper world lasted for what seemed like hours, though we had little time to rest. We stood there together, two brothers who had escaped the brutal life of male drow in the Underdark. Drizzt's handsome, youthful features reflected off of the pale moonlight. I saw myself in him. I thought of the danger we might face in the future. In my heart, I knew I had made the right decision. I knew once the sun came up, it would be unbearable for the two of us. We descended the cliff using a piton I crafted using the adamantine hook from my hookshot, and our last cord of spider silk rope from our pack. Below us was a sprawling forest. After walking to a safe distance where I knew the Loth assassins could not reach us, I discovered an abandoned cave. I washed down a capsule of Druganai to help me sleep. We took shelter there together and rested until the next nightfall came. Nightfall came earlier than I expected. We learned of the troll settlement by smell before we saw it. Smoke drifted between the trees, heavy with burned fat, damp wood, and something sour that neither Drizzt nor I cared to identify. The scent clung to the morning air and grew stronger as we followed the narrow valley north. I stopped beneath a leaning pine. Drizzt nearly passed me before noticing.
What is it?
I pointed toward a strip of bark torn from the trunk at shoulder height. 3 crude lines had been cut into the wood. Beneath them hung what appeared to be the mangled body of a half-elf. It was nearly impossible to identify what race the body originated from. All that remained was a gangly assembly of bones, ligaments, and skin. All muscles and organs had been harvested from it. Drizzt leaned closer.
Territorial marker?
Or decoration.
You criticized my understanding of surface decoration yesterday.
These surface creatures are almost as bad at decorating as you are, I replied. He looked toward the valley. The ground sloped downward between dark ridges. The forest there was thinner. Many of the trees had been broken rather than cut. Their trunks split beneath tremendous force. Smoke rose in several places beyond them.
We should go around.
We could.
But
I unfolded the surface map we had found among the remains of a traveler's pack near the old road. Much of it meant little to us, but the shapes of the hills and waterways were clear enough. The valley narrows to the west, I said. Cliffs on one side, a river gorge on the other.
And east?
2 additional days through open country. Drizzt studied the map.
Then through the valley.
Through the troll settlement.
You say that as though the difference is comforting.
It is useful to name the danger accurately. The route north led toward a series of old roads, and, according to the map, a ruined watchtower beyond the valley. From there, we hoped to see enough of the surrounding land to choose our next destination. The alternative was wandering without direction while our food diminished. We had escaped Menzoberranzan. That did not mean we had escaped the need to eat. Drizzt crouched beside the pine and looked toward the smoke.
How many?
I cannot tell.
3 fires.
Perhaps. I could make out the outlines of some huge humanoid creatures. I had never seen anything like them before in the Underdark. You have become encouraging.
I am conserving optimism, big brother.
We left the path and climbed the ridge. From its crest, the settlement became visible below. It had once been a logging camp. The remains of human buildings stood among the trees, their roofs collapsed and their doors torn away. Trolls had expanded the place without improving it. Hides covered broken walls. Crude shelters leaned against old stone foundations. Tree trunks had been piled into fences, their roots and branches still attached. A wide clearing occupied the center. There, several cook fires burned beneath iron pots large enough to hold a drow warrior comfortably. Drizzt counted in silence. I counted as well. 9 trolls moved openly through the settlement. There were probably more inside the shelters. One sharpened a bloody cleaver against a stone wheel. Another sat beneath a tree, repairing a net from thick rope. 2 younger trolls wrestled near a pile of split wood while a larger female shouted at them. At the northern edge of the camp stood a gate made from sharpened logs. Beyond it, the road continued toward the hills.
We cannot fight them.
I am relieved that you noticed.
Don't belittle me, big brother.
He glanced sideways at me. The pale cloth we had tied around our eyes protected us from some of the daylight, though the forest shade helped more. Our piwafwis had continued to deteriorate since reaching the surface. The once enchanted fabric had stiffened into brittle metal cloth, useful only in strips. We no longer resembled nobles of House Do-Erden. That was probably for the best. Drizzt studied the settlement again.
There is a drainage channel along the western edge.
I followed his gaze. A narrow trench carried muddy water from the camp toward the river. It passed beneath the outer fence through a gap too small for a troll, but large enough for us. The smell will be unpleasant, I said.
You object?
I am preparing myself.
We could use the eastern fence. 3 guards. They appear inattentive. One is asleep.
That supports my point. The sleeping one may wake.
Your objections lack imagination.
Your plans contain too much of it. Drizzt smiled faintly. It was strange how quickly our conversations had changed since leaving the city. In Menzoberranzan, words were guarded things. Every joke risked revealing weakness. Every disagreement carried the possibility of insult. Here, with no one to overhear us but trolls and birds, speaking had become simpler. We connected as brothers as we never have before. We waited until the settlement grew active. It seemed foolish at first. Darkness would have concealed us better, but trolls saw well in the night, and a silent camp would make every sound more noticeable. During the day, the creatures shouted, argued, dragged wood, hammered metal, and overturned things for no reason I could understand. Noise became cover. We descended the ridge and entered the drainage channel. The muddy water reached halfway to my boots. It smelled of spoiled food, wet ash, and, unfortunately, trolls. Drizzt moved ahead of me. This was your preferred route?
I selected it after careful study.
You selected it because it was a ditch.
Not just a ditch, brother. Don't let some troll feces distract you from our goal. Focus on the task at hand.
Something pale floated past my ankle. I chose not to examine it. The channel deepened as it approached the settlement. Branches and old leaves formed a partial roof above us. Through gaps, I could see the outer fence. A troll stood on the other side. Its feet were broad and bare. Black claws pressed into the mud only a few paces from Drizzt's head. We stopped. The troll scratched itself. Then it remained there. Time passed. The creature seemed content to stand beside the drainage trench for the rest of its life. Drizzt reached slowly into the mud and picked up a small stone. I gave him a questioning look. He pointed toward a pile of empty barrels inside the fence. Then he threw a stone that struck the farthest barrel. The sound was small. The effect was not. The troll spun toward it and kicked the nearest barrel aside. It shouted something, perhaps accusing the barrels of treachery. Another troll answered from deeper in the settlement. The guards stomped away. Drizzt looked back at me. Must have been the wind.
An argument with barrels is not the outcome I expected. It was the outcome I hoped for.
We passed beneath a fence. Inside, the drainage channel widened behind the remains of a wooden building. Its walls leaned dangerously, but they concealed us from the central clearing. We climbed from the water. Mud covered our boots and lower clothing. Drizzt inspected me.
You look terrible.
You are standing in the same ditch.
I carry it better.
We moved between the ruined structures. The settlement was larger from within. Trolls had collected objects from across the surrounding countryside. Broken carts rested against walls. Tools hung from trees. Cooking vessels, shields, helmets, chains, and farming equipment had been piled without order. Much of it was ruined. Some was not. We passed a wooden table covered with stolen goods. A silver cup stood beside 3 horseshoes and half a suit of rusted armor. A child's painted toy lay beneath a coil of rope. The sight quieted us. This was not merely a settlement. It was the accumulated remains of travelers who had failed to cross the valley. Drizzt touched the toy with one finger. "Do not," I whispered. He withdrew his hand.
I was only looking.
So was I. We continued. The northern gate remained several hundred paces away. Between us and it lay the central clearing. There was no path around it without passing close to several occupied shelters. I studied the movement of the trolls. They were preparing a meal. 3 gathered around the largest fire, arguing over what should be placed in the pot. 2 others carried bundles of wood. The smaller trolls had stopped wrestling and were throwing stones at a hanging shield. The female troll crossed the clearing repeatedly, striking anyone who came too near her cooking place. "She commands them," I whispered.
She orders them around. Not worse than our matron mother, though,
my little brother said. Indeed, although her face and body mocked the matron.
Ha 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 ha.
Drizzt quickly covered his mouth to not reveal our position. A shout came from our left. We pressed against the wall of a ruined storehouse. A troll emerged from behind it, carrying a wooden crate beneath one arm. It passed close enough that I could see flies moving around its shoulders. The creature stopped. Its nostrils widened. Mud covered much of our scent, but apparently not enough. The troll turned toward the wall. Drizzt drew one scimitar. I shook my head. The troll took another step. I saw its shadow before its face appeared around the corner. Then the female near the fire screamed. Every troll in the clearing looked toward her. She was pointing into the iron pot. One of the younger trolls had dropped the hanging shield inside it. The young troll had spoiled the mother troll's sickening concoction. From the distance I was at, I could spot a variety of grotesque body parts floating around inside its pot. Multiple human legs varied in skin tone. A child's body, a dwarf head. Its face was locked in a terrified expression. Rigor mortis must have set in that way. What an awful way to the end of your life, I thought. A deer carcass. I had to force myself to look away. The settlement erupted into argument. Our troll grunted and hurried toward the commotion, still carrying the crate. Drizzt slowly sheathed his blade.
You should thank the young one.
If we survive, I will remember its service. We slipped inside the storehouse. The interior was dark and cool. Sunlight entered through gaps in the roof, illuminating dust and hanging webs. Most of the floor had collapsed. Shelves lined one wall, filled with objects the trolls had apparently considered too delicate or uninteresting to leave outside. Books swollen by moisture, glass bottles, bundles of cloth. a small brass instrument with lenses fitted into a leather frame. Drizzt picked it up.
What is this?
I examined it. 2 dark pieces of glass sat before the eyes. Leather straps allowed the device to be fastened around the head. Some kind of protective lens.
For smithing?
Perhaps. He held it toward one of the gaps in the roof. The dark glass reduced the shaft of sunlight to a muted amber glow. Drizzt looked through it. His expression changed.
Dinin,
What?
I can see.
You could see before.
Without pain.
He handed it to me. I lifted the device to my eyes. The world darkened. The bright holes in the roof no longer burned white. Details returned to the wood around them. Dust became visible within the light instead of disappearing inside it. It was not perfect, but it was far better than strips of ruined piwafwi. Smoked lenses, I said. Surface folk have found a way to weaken the sun.
A small victory against a persistent enemy.
We searched the shelves. Behind a stack of cracked plates, Drizzt found a second pair. These were smaller and scratched, but still usable. We fastened the smoked glass lenses over our eyes. The straps were designed for broader heads, yet they held. Drizzt looked ridiculous. I assumed I did as well. How do I appear?
Like a blind, deep gnome attempting burglary. You look older.
I am older. Much older. We should leave. We placed the remaining bundles of dark cloth into our packs. They were simple surface garments, hooded traveling cloaks, wool shirts, and gloves. Some were stained, but they would help us replace the failing drow cloth. The smoked lenses were the true prize. For the first time since sunrise, I could raise my head without tears. A heavy step sounded outside. Then another. The crate-carrying troll returned. Drizzt and I moved behind a fallen shelving unit. The troll entered. It placed the crate on the floor and began searching through the room. Perhaps it had remembered the scent. Perhaps it wanted something from the shelves. Its back blocked the doorway. We could not pass without being seen. Drizzt indicated the broken floor. A narrow beam crossed the gap below us. Beneath it lay the building's cellar, mostly filled with debris. We lowered ourselves quietly. The troll turned just as my boots disappeared beneath the floor. Drizzt followed. We crouched among broken boards and damp sacks. Above, the troll sniffed. Its hand reached through the gap. Long black claws swept across the beam. Drizzt leaned away. The hand withdrew. Then the entire shelving unit lifted. Light filled the cellar. The troll looked down at us. Its face stretched into a grin.
What you doing, Black Elf?
It reached for Drizzt. He moved faster. His scimitar flashed and cut across the creature's palm. The wound opened, then immediately began closing. The troll roared in pain. Its other hand came crashing through the floor. I pushed Drizzt aside, but it left me exposed. The hand closed around my chest. For a moment, there was only pressure. My arms were trapped against my sides. The troll lifted me from the cellar as easily as it might lift a sack of grain. Wood broke around us. I emerged into the storehouse, gripped in one enormous fist. The troll held me close to its face. Its breath was worse than the drainage channel.
You make me a tasty meal now.
The words came out as a pleased bellow. I tried to draw Ice Brand, but the creature's fingers pinned my arm. Its grip tightened. Pain spread through my ribs. I felt my ribs crack underneath my chainmail. Drizzt climbed from the cellar behind it. The troll did not see him. I did. He moved with the effortless balance that had always separated him from other warriors. One foot touched the broken beam, then the wall, then the edge of a shelf. He climbed not by stopping, but by converting each step into the next. He dashed from each stepping point with the grace of a cave spider. His twin scimitars appeared in his hands as naturally as breath. The troll began to turn. Drizzt sprang. He did not attack the creature's back. He crossed both blades before its face. The troll recoiled instinctively. Drizzt landed upon its forearm. One scimitar hooked beneath a thick finger. His second scimitar, Icing Death, slashed the inside of its wrist. The troll's hand that held me opened up. Olive-colored blood sprayed everywhere in a thick haze. I fell. Drizzt caught the back of my armor with one hand as he dropped from the creature's arm. He could not stop my full weight, but he redirected it. Instead of striking the floor flat upon my back, I landed on one knee and rolled. The troll swung at him. Drizzt slid beneath the blow. His twin scimitars crossed behind the creature's Achilles tendon. He crossed them in perfect motion, cutting deeply. The troll stumbled off balance in a forward direction and crashed into the wooden table. The table broke. Glass bottles shattered beneath it. The creature rose on one knee almost immediately. The wounds upon its hand and leg were already closing.
We cannot kill it quietly.
Drizzt spoke in a loud whisper. I had reached the same conclusion. The troll roared again. Outside, answering voices rose across the settlement. We had moments. Drizzt looked toward the remaining shelves. A row of clay jars sat near the roof. Each was marked with a crude red flame. Oil. He saw them at the same moment I did. Drizzt drew his fine mastercraft dirk and threw it in perfect rotation. The blade struck the shelf support. The wood split. The jars fell. Oil burst across the troll's shoulders and back. Drizzt aimed his open palm at the troll. The troll charged. Drizzt stepped toward it. For one impossible instant, he seemed to invite the creature's grasp. Then he turned sideways, passed beneath its reaching arm, and chanted the words to a familiar cantrip.
Ignis.
Flame climbed the troll's back. The creature bellowed and forgot us entirely. It crashed through the doorway, rolling in the mud outside. The settlement erupted. Trolls shouted. Some ran toward the fire. Others ran away from it. One overturned the cooking pot. Another attempted to extinguish the burning troll by striking it with a wet animal hide. Drizzt retrieved his dagger.
You let it take you.
I did not let it do anything.
You appeared comfortable.
It was an intimate moment.
Should I have given you more time?
I sheathed the dagger. You may remind me of this after we leave.
I intend to.
We climbed through a hole in the rear wall. The camp had descended into chaos. The burning troll ran through the central clearing. Its companions chased it with buckets, hides, and one large pot of stew. No one watched the northern gate. We moved quickly between shelters. A young troll appeared ahead of us. It stared. We stared back. The creature opened its mouth. Drizzt threw the child's painted toy toward the far side of the path. The troll looked at it, then ran after it. I glanced at my brother. You You planned that?
No. Improvisation.
We reached the gate. A heavy wooden bar held it shut. Together, we lifted it from its brackets. The gate opened inward with a long creak. Behind us, someone shouted. 2 trolls had finally noticed. We ran. The road beyond the settlement climbed steeply into the hills. Troll footsteps struck the earth behind us. But the road was clear, and we could see the broken ridges ahead. Drizzt ran beside me.
How far can they follow?
As far as they wish.
You remain encouraging.
I am conserving breath. The pain of my broken ribs started to weigh on me. A spear struck the road behind us. It was little more than a sharpened tree branch. A second passed overhead and vanished into the brush. We left the road and entered a stand of young birches. The trolls followed. Their size became a disadvantage among the narrow trunks. Branches struck their faces. Roots caught their feet. Drizzt changed direction repeatedly, leading them farther into the trees. I followed his path. He was not merely fleeing. He was choosing where they would step. Ahead, the ground dropped sharply. A narrow ravine cut across the hillside. An old pine had fallen over it, forming a rough bridge. Drizzt crossed first. The trunk bent beneath his weight but held. I followed. Behind us, the first troll reached the ravine. It stepped onto the pine. Drizzt drew 1 scimitar. "Wait," I said. The second troll joined the first. The trunk groaned. "Now," I said. Drizzt struck the weakened base. I cut from the opposite side. The old wood split. The pine rolled. Both trolls fell into the ravine with a crash of branches and angry voices. The drop was not deep enough to kill them, but it was deep enough to delay them. We continued uphill. Neither spoke until the shouts had faded. At last, we reached the ridge. The ruined tower stood beyond it. It had once been part of a surface border fort. Only 3 walls remained intact, and the upper floor had partly collapsed. Ivy covered the stone. An old iron door hung crookedly from one hinge. We entered cautiously. No trolls waited inside. No travelers had used it recently. A narrow stair curved upward along the wall, though several steps were missing. At the top, an open platform overlooked the valley. We climbed. From there, the troll settlement appeared as a cluster of smoke beneath the trees. The burning troll was no longer visible. The camp remained active, but no pursuit emerged from it. Drizzt sat against the broken parapet. I lowered myself beside him. My ribs ached where the troll had held me. He noticed.
Broken?
Yeah. I've had worse. Don't worry about me. Little brother. You impressed me back there. I'm proud of the warrior you have become. He reached into his pack and removed a greater potion of healing. I took it. The liquid tasted of metal and bitter herbs. Warmth spread slowly through my chest. Drizzt looked toward the valley.
I learned from the best.
You did, in fact.
Trolls make fearsome enemies.
The Yath are worse.
The Yath were less likely to eat me.
Do not be certain. He laughed quietly. The sound drifted into the tower's empty upper chamber. I adjusted the smoked glass lenses. They work, I said. Drizzt touched his own pair.
A useful treasure.
Stolen from trolls.
Recovered from thieves.
We examined the other things taken from the storehouse. 2 dark traveling cloaks. A wrapped bundle of dried fruit. A small knife intended for cutting rope. Several copper coins. A stoppered jar of salve labeled in common. Drizzt opened it and smelled the contents.
Sunburn.
He read.
What is that?
Apparently the sun does more than blind. I looked toward the horizon. A persistent enemy. At the bottom of the pack lay a narrow brass tube. I extended it. A section slid outward. Glass lenses rested at both ends. When I looked through it, the troll settlement leaped closer. Individual shelters became clear. I could see trolls moving around the central fire. Drizzt took the tube.
A spyglass. Useful.
He turned it toward the north. Beyond the tower, the road descended into farmland. A village lay several miles away beside a river. Smoke rose from chimneys. A stone bridge crossed the water. Farther still stood a line of blue mountains.
We have choices. Too many.
You preferred tunnels.
In a tunnel, there are usually 2 directions, and both may contain enemies. That simplifies the decision.
Drizzt lowered the spyglass.
We should remain here until night.
Yes. Then travel after dark.
Agreed. And avoid troll settlements in the future.
Whenever possible. He leaned his head against the stone.
Thank you, big brother. I love you.
Likewise, little brother. We descended into the tower's lower chamber. An old fireplace remained against one wall. Dry branches had collected beneath the broken roof, and we used them to build a small fire. The new cloaks were plain and rough, but they bent without breaking. We removed the remains of our piwafwis. For a moment, I held mine before the flames. The metal cloth had once marked me as a noble warrior of Menzoberranzan. It had hidden me in darkness and carried the enchantments of drowcraft. Now it was gray, cracked, and useless. I placed it in the fire. The cloth curled. Small green and violet flames moved through the metal threads before fading into ordinary orange. Drizzt watched. Then he added his own. Neither of us spoke. The last visible sign of House Do'Urden blackened and collapsed into ash. We wrapped ourselves in the surface cloaks. They smelled faintly of cedar. Night settled over the tower. The smoked lenses rested beside our packs. The spyglass lay between us. For the first time, we possessed tools made not for the Underdark, but for the open world above it. They were small things, dark glass, simple wool, a brass tube, yet they felt like the beginning of adaptation. Outside, wind passed through the ruined stones. An owl called from somewhere below. Drizzt looked outwards from an archery window.
Birds are amazing creatures.
Flying must be an incredible feeling.
Don't you have levitate magic?
I don't think it's the same, little brother. He smiled and settled beneath his cloak. I took the first watch. From the doorway, I could see the road beneath the stars. I took a capsule of Drudunai to ease the pain. The troll settlement lay behind us. The valley waited below. Ahead were farms, villages, mountains, and more roads than I could imagine. The surface remained painfully bright, dangerously open and filled with creatures that might crush a drow in one hand. But we had passed through the village of broken trees. Drizzt had pulled me from a troll's grasp with the same impossible grace he brought to every blade. We had found a tower. We had food for another day. I rest my broken body on the cold stone of the watchtower, wondering if I had made the right decision. I let the euphoria of the Mordain powder wash over me. When the sun returned, we would meet it through darkened glass. For the first time since leaving the Underdark, I did not feel entirely unprepared.